Hi, we're going to get started in this data engineering pipeline, and the pipeline overview will be we get data from an API and then get the data and load it and then transform it from a JSON format to a CSV format, and then you're going to load it in a CSV file. Yeah, so that's the overview of the project, and that will be part one. And then we have part two, where we are going to integrate Airflow to automate this retrieval of data or this extraction of data. And then we're going to also use Docker and get PostgreSQL, and which will be our sink. This will be where we store our data. Yeah, and that's the entire overview of the project. Yeah, so as you know, the data is increasing, and each day more data and more data is produced. And how well can we integrate these data sources to our pipelines? Yeah, we have services like Fivetran, we have services like Airbyte that are used to integrate to our sources. Also Informatica, used for integration in our data pipelines. But again, we are making use of cheap. How do you go cheap? Many of these data sources have APIs, and how well can we get data from an API? How do we real data from an API? How do we get whatever we need the right way, and to make sure that our pipeline is not failing? And ideally, the API has documentation. So APIs have good documentation, and you just need to read the documentation and understand. And our API in this case will be the Weather API, a very simple API that you can get from anyone can get it. Yeah, I've had this API for a very long time, where I use it to get data for sample pipelines to test my coding skills. Yeah, and we'll be getting this data from this Weather API. We get data from some cities, yeah, 40 of them, and then we'll be loading this data to CSV file. Also, we'll show you how to transform JSON file to the CSV format. Yeah, it's very crucial to understand how we really transform this in the pipeline to avoid using other expensive tools to transform this for you. Let's say if you're using AWS, you need to use Lambda to do this transformation for you. But if you can do it from your code, then you save resources on Lambda. So we'll get right into the pipeline. Remember to keep in touch for part 2, where we'll create now this end-to-end, Dockerize all this. Yeah, you surely don't want to miss this episode. You don't want to miss the next episode. So let's get into coding. PyCharm, IntelliJ, whichever you choose and whichever you use, using VS Code and Python. So are you ready to get your hands dirty? Let's get right into it. And so, as you can see from my PowerShell terminal, I am in my documents folder, and I'm in tut folder in the documents directory. So I'll be creating a file here. I'll call it main.py. Remember, it's a Python file, so it has to have a Python extension. And yeah, so I'm going to get right into this. And one thing you'll note that I have Copilot, so it will have it can finish my code as I write, but I'll be writing everything. I will not be copy pasting, to guide you in everything that you're going to be using. So we're going to be importing some libraries. So import JSON. Remember, if you're getting data from an API, it gets data in JSON format. Import CSV. Then you're going from datetime. From datetime, import datetime. Yeah, datetime and time zone. from import, sorry, from datetime, import CSV with not from. Then going to be importing another one is requests. This is the URL that this is what we are going to be connecting to the URL of the of the of the API of the weather API, and then you're going to import time. Yeah, so let's get the cities name. So the cities, those city names allow me to copy paste this because I have almost 40 cities in Africa and in the world. Yeah, so just copy paste in city names and that. So you have Nairobi, my current city, London, Kampala, another city in Kenya called Thika, yeah, to Accra, to Dubai, to Madrid, and you're going to have a base URL. I'm indenting this and it should not base URL, and you have it as well. You can see that it is auto correcting me and it's ending. So this is the base URL that you're going to be interacting with. So you can see what it gives you. It gives you this. So the current with the data, and I'll be showing you how I've gotten the API, although I'll be deactivating this API and you can't use it. So my API, let me see my API keys. Yeah, this is my API keys, and here is my API. So you just need to get your API key and create one, and it becomes accessible to you. Yeah, and depending on how you like to expose your sorry, where is it? Yeah, so depending on how you like to expose your API, we don't want to expose this API to this code, and you're going to create another file where you're going to store the API separately. Although when you reach there, we create it. So although you can create it right now, so if you're in the same directory, make sure you're in the same directory, and you can create another file. I will name it as credentials.txt. This is where I'll be saving my API key. As you have seen the API key, you have seen it, so I'll just copy it here. Yeah, and that's my API key, and I'll save it. Yeah, so let's go back to our main.py, and we will read the API from the file. And so let me comment this: read the API from an external file but in the same directory. And so you're going to be using with open, and so we have named it credentials. So we have to do this double quotes, credentials.txt. Yeah, and then R, and then as F. So this is what you're going to, you can give it any name. SF, then we have API key read strip. So we want to, while you're using the strip, this is a function in Python, and you can remove any leading or trailing white spaces. Trailing new line characters. This is, remember, that's a comment and it won't be executed in our code. So we're going to create a function, and with getting data from an API, I think your ability in Python will be tested, and we're going to make use of OOP concepts, object tested, and we are going to make use of OOP concepts where we have class and in functions, although now they are called methods since they're in a class. But for now, we're just going to create functions, not very hard functions, since this is not a very complicated API to interact with. And we're going to be using this to be a function that will be converting Kelvin to Celsius. Remember, we normally don't read data using Kelvin. Yeah. So I'm going to name this Kelvin to Celsius. And we're going to have this, what will be in our code will be in our bracket will be temperature in Kelvin. And after that, remember, you have to put that to ensure that it registers this as a functions and it automatically indents for you. And temperature in Celsius. So this is the code. So this is temperature in Celsius. So now it's the transformation in Celsius is equals to temperature in Kelvin minus that 273.15. This is geography. Yeah, so if you don't have knowledge in geography, then you won't be able to see this. You won't be able to understand what I'm doing. Convert to Celsius. And yeah, so we are going to return. So do we return? So if you understand Python, we are going to have to return whatever our input is, the temperature in Celsius. Yeah, so and then you're going to have another function that will be having the ETL weather, call it that, weather data, the data, and then what will be here is the URL. This is the URL. Remember, we have defined it. So then you're going to close this, and then you're going to be having R equals requests. Remember, we imported requests. So requests dot get URL, and data equals, now this R equals r.json. Our data is in JSON format. Yeah, and so we're going to have if we get the data, so if data is there, it has a status code of 200. Yeah, if it brings that output, that will be the log output if it gets data there. So we are going to assume, no, sorry, we're going to take it as if it gets that the status code is 200. Now, if there's data, these are the transformations that we are going to do. So if our status code is equals, remember you have to use two equal signs, 200, then you're going to have the following. city is equals to data name. And yeah, so the other one is weather description. The description equals to data. So I think I will just show you how this I'm inputting. And so we are going to get data weather. Then the first character that will show us is the weather, sunny or windy or cloudy or rainy. So I just help this to autocorrect. And I'm going to add some code here. So allow me to copy paste this because it will take a long time for nothing. So we are going to have these are the values that you're going to be getting. Yeah, so the city gives the city name, and the weather descriptions extract well, I'll call it a short description of the weather, maybe clear sky, light rain, so just a general description. So now this converts to Kelvin to Celsius, so feels like Celsius. So what it actually feels like considering humidity and the wind. So mean temperature, max temperature, of course, that's now the mean temperature recorded and the maximum temperature recorded. And then you have the pressure, the humidity, the wind speed. What time was it recorded? We're going to be looking at this. So my time here is around 2 in the evening. And so we're going to be looking if this was the time that will be recorded as the log output. So and then you have the sunrise time and the sunset time. So that will be the output of our data. And as you can see around here at the time of record, there are some links that are changing, and we're going to need to change this. So we're going to change from timestamp to this to from timestamp. From timestamp. So this from timestamp, and also this. Although it still would work. Still would work, but let's change it. Yeah, and then just going to be now you are going to be getting this transform data. This now what is in the left side of this equal sign. Yeah, that's what you're going to be getting as the transform data, and it will be, so just copy this and paste this, just be inside this if function, by the way, keep that in mind. So yeah, so transform data, and then so we are going to be returning now this from this def function. So what will be return? What will be in our CSV file? So what do we return? Yeah, you guessed it right. Transform data. Returning that. And so we have an if statement. So we have an else. Then so we are going to, of course, you're going to print error and an error message. So let's say print this error message. So we'll have an F string format. Yeah, so you're going to be getting the error and the status code. And so you're going to be returning none. Return none. Yeah, so now we'll have a main function. Make sure your indenting is good. Yeah, so going to be having a main function, def main, let me not main. Yeah, and for this you're going to be defining the CSV file, and then you're going to create now this CSV file, and then add the time and add the data. Yeah, so just a simple execution code, very simple, very direct. Yeah, so we are going to define the CSV file name. So define our CSV file name, and our CSV file, we're going to give it whether CSV, and we write the header once. So remember, we have this data that we are adding. So this transform data, this header, now this city description temperature, this will be a header. So we're going to be write the header once. So this should be, I want this to be in a comment. So we're going to write the head of the CSV. Yeah, and so we're going to be having with open CSV file. Remember, we have already, it's a variable. Then mode, we're going to, it's writing, and new line, and go to another line. As so the other one, give it an F, so let this one name it file, and so it will be writer equals to CSV dict writer. Yeah, so dict writer, and then file and field names. So file, field names. Yeah, and then you're going to add now these details of our CSV file. So we will give that yeah, so then you're going to have writer dot write header, and so I'm going to give the current time, as time, that's now daytime. That's why we have daytime dot now. So just going to have a while function here. Yeah, now we are going to create a while function that will be appending this data in this row for all these cities to CSV in every 5 minutes. Yeah, so it will run for 300 seconds. Yeah, so that's 5 minutes. 1 minute, yeah, it will run for, it will fetch the data for each city. Yeah, and then it will transform the data for each city, and then it will append only one row, and then it will print. Yeah, so and then it will wait for 5 seconds before fetching data for another city. Yeah, so it helps avoid API rate limits. Yeah, and it will run for 5 minutes and then stop. After that, it stops the data collection, and if name, and then you're going to have an if name main to end now this, and it will run when executed directory. Yeah, so let's write this code for as we finish this job. So it will have while, and so we have while daytime dot now. It will have minus, remember we have variable current time dot seconds, so it will not be 300, just as you said what you're doing. So you're going to have for city, so you're going to have a for loop for city in city names. Yeah, So we're going to have full URL equals to base URL, that the one that we gave above, so plus city plus, so we have an yeah, and then you have AP, sorry, this PPID would finish this. Yeah, so we're going to have a try and accept. So try, so get the data equals to now the main function that we got to get ETL weather data. Then so we are going to have it as full URL. So then if so weather data then I'm going to have with open CSV file, then Linux file. So let's just type this, whatever my code pilot is giving me, it's slightly different with what I want to execute. So you have the mod, although just don't need to define this, and new line. So going to have this and so as well, and so we're going to have the writer. So remember, this was code that we wrote earlier above, that is writer equals to, sorry, equals to CSV predict writer and file. You're not going to have to write all this. File dot file, then you're going to have field names, equals to weather data dot keys, so we have avoided writing again all that. So we're going to have weather dot write row and the data. So we're going to have the print recorded data for which city. So we're going to have an f string, and we're going to have recorded with that data for, then of course we're going to have city for weather data, then city, yeah, to CSV. Yeah, so I'm going to have to wait for 5 seconds before the next request. Yeah, so yeah, time that's 5 seconds, sorry. Then you're going to have, so except exception as R, as exception as E, sorry. And you're going to have the print an error. So you're going to have here if main. So we're going to execute that. So we need to save this and see if it runs. So you're going to come in our terminal. So of course you have Python. Sorry. So you have Python, then run main.py, and you'll see if it will create file. And fingers crossed that you're going to get a file being created and data being appended to that file. And so you can see that as created weather, yeah, and you can see, oh, you can see it has created data. So you can see the city, we have Nairobi, description, we have broken clouds. So temperature is this, so feels like this. So the temperature is that, but it feels like temperature is 30, but it feels like 28. The maximum temperature was 30, and the minimum was the minimum temperature was 30.15, and it was also recorded that. Yeah, so we can see data being appended. Yeah, and you can see time recorded. So let's see that sunrise, sunset, time recorded was 1756. Yeah, 1456, sorry. Yeah, my actual time around here. Yeah, so we can see it as it's adding all these cities, it's running. So you can see it's adding Nairobi, London, Kampala, Thika, Beijing, New York, Paris, Tokyo, Sydney, all these cities of data. So this is how to go about getting data from an API, and any API of choice or you get, you just need to get yourself on the documentation. When you get yourself on the when you read and understand the documentation, then it's very, very, very easy to write a script to get data from there. Remember, as data increases, you will need to understand how to create such a pipeline that handles data. Yeah, and if you would have gone to another stage of data processing, we would have gone to maybe it's rounding off this to one decimal place. It's too messed up, it's too dirty. Yeah, and understanding really the sunrise, the sunset, and then you're going to group cities that are in the same UTC based on the sunrise and the sunset. Yeah, very easy. Yeah, when you get the right data. So get yourself hands dirty on such a project. Yeah, and we'll delve into part 2, where we're going to automate this using Airflow. We're just going to get an Airflow to run this. Yeah, and then we're going to create Docker where it will have the Airflow and it will have the PostgreSQL. Yeah, so end-to-end data engineering pipeline that you can put in your portfolio. Yeah, so open source, you can put it with having no worries with me having an issue. Yeah, so till part 2, see you then.